Welcome to GE Fun Facts Online. The wind howls through the broken columns of the Roman Forum, whistling past the incised circles and grids, etched into the marble pavers of the Basilica Julia. For centuries, these silent geometric ghosts, the gaming boards of idle senators, bored soldiers, and street urchins, have guarded their secrets. We knew the Romans played. We found their dice, their glass counters, and their heavy stone boards from Hadrian's Wall to the sands of Egypt. But the rules, the logic, the strategy, the thrill of the victory had evaporated into the ether of history. They were lost because no Roman scribe ever thought it necessary to write down instructions for games that absolutely everyone already knew. For 2,000 years, historians and archaeologists could only guess at how the legions passed their time. They projected modern rules like chess or checkers onto ancient grids, creating anachronistic hybrids that felt stiff, lifeless, and honestly quite boring. But in the third decade of the 21st century, a new player entered the archaeological arena: artificial intelligence. This is the story of the Ludus Algorithm, a revolutionary intersection of digital archaeology, evolutionary computation, and ludology, which is the study of games. Today, we are diving deep into how the Digital Ludeme Project, led by researchers at Maastricht University, utilized the raw processing power of the Ludii general game system to reverse engineer the lost pastimes of the Roman Empire. By treating games not as static artifacts but as evolving organisms made of ludemes, which are essentially genetic units of game logic, and by training AI agents to play millions of phantom matches, science has finally broken the silence of the stones. We can now play the games of Caesar and Augustus not as we imagine they were played, but as the mathematics of fun and the physical evidence of wear patterns dictate they absolutely must have been played. To understand the magnitude of this technological breakthrough, we first have to appreciate the massive archaeological void it fills. Gaming was not merely a trivial pastime in ancient Rome, it was a societal heartbeat. It occurred in the smoke-filled taverns of Sabara, on the leather tents of the legions in Germania, and in the marble courtyards of the Palatine Hill. The archaeological record is absolutely teeming with hardware. We have the tabulae, the boards, often scratched as graffiti into public spaces. We have the calculi, the counters, made of glass, bone, pottery, or polished stone. We have the tesserae, the dice, identical to our modern six-sided cubes, though often weighted by cheats to favor the high-scoring Venus throw. However, the software, the rules themselves, is almost entirely missing. The Romans did not write rulebooks. Think about it. You probably learned to play tic-tac-toe or checkers by watching someone else, not by reading a manual. A Roman learned to play Latrunculi or Duodecim Scripta by watching their father, or by losing a week's wages to a veteran in the barracks. The literary sources we do have are fragmentary and poetic, often frustratingly vague. The Roman poet Ovid, in his work Tristia, mentions a game where a piece is lost when caught between two enemies. This single line is the cornerstone of our understanding of Ludus Latrunculorum, the game of mercenaries. But does the captured piece vanish immediately? Does the captor move into the square? Can a piece commit suicide by deliberately moving between two enemies? Ovid does not say. He was writing a lament on his exile, not a technical manual for board games. Martial, the epigrammatist, jokes about glass soldiers in a blocked path, but offers no grid dimensions. Varro, the scholar, mentions the grid but not the movement. For centuries, this left historians with an impossible puzzle. We had the chessboard and the pieces, but no idea how the knight moved. Traditional historians attempted to fill these gaps with human intuition. In the 19th and 20th centuries, scholars produced reconstructions that were heavily biased by the games of their own time. They assumed Roman games were just early, primitive versions of chess or backgammon. But history is rarely linear. The evolution of play is a complex branching tree, not a straight line of progress. The result of these biased reconstructions was that museum gift shops sold Roman board games with rules that were historically implausible and terribly boring to play. This introduces a crucial concept called the playability gap. If a reconstructed rule set results in a game that always ends in a draw or where the first player to move always wins, it is almost certainly incorrect. The Romans were a sophisticated, highly strategic culture. They would not have wasted their time over hundreds of years on broken game mechanics. This is exactly where the Ludus algorithm changed everything by applying artificial intelligence to an archaeological problem. The breakthrough began with a fundamental shift in how we define what a game actually is. In the eyes of the Digital Ludeme Project, a game is not a monolithic entity. It is a compound structure made of smaller, atomic units called ludemes. Just as a biological organism is defined by its genes, a game is defined by its ludemes. For example, ludeme A might dictate that the board is an 8x8 grid. Ludeme B might state that pieces move orthogonally, like a rook in chess. Ludeme C establishes that capture is custodial, meaning you capture an enemy by sandwiching it between two of your own pieces. Ludeme D defines the goal, perhaps to eliminate all enemy pieces. By breaking games down into these functional mathematical units, researchers created a game description language that a computer could natively understand. The Ludi system serves as a universal game engine capable of modeling almost any game in human history, provided it is fed the correct ludemes. The Ludus algorithm is essentially a brute force evolutionary process, but an incredibly smart one. Since we do not know the exact combination of ludemes that made up the Roman game Ludus Latrunculorum, the AI generates thousands of potential variations. Variant 1 might have an 8x8 board, diagonal movement, and jump capture. Variant 2 might use a 10x11 board, orthogonal movement, and custodial capture. Variant 3 could feature a 12x8 board, a knight's move, and custodial capture. To a human researcher, playtesting these thousands of variants to see if they are actually fun would take multiple lifetimes. To the AI, utilizing a technique called Monte Carlo tree search, it takes merely hours. The AI plays these variants against itself, millions of times, at a speed impossible for biological minds. But the AI does not just play, it acts as a judge. The core innovation of the Ludus methodology is the heuristic of quality. The AI evaluates each reconstructed rule set based on a series of metrics that define a scientifically good game. First is balance. Does player 1 win 99% of the time? If so, the rules are likely wrong, or the game would never have survived ancient Rome. Second is depth. Does the game require strategic thinking, or is it purely reliant on luck? Third is drama. Does the game oscillate? Are there epic comebacks, or is the winner obviously decided in the first 3 moves? Fourth is drawishness. Does the game end in a frustrating stalemate far too often? And fifth is duration. Is the game over in 3 turns, which is too short, or 3,000 turns, which is far too long? By filtering the thousands of generated rule sets through these mathematical fun filters, the AI naturally discards the broken, boring, and unbalanced versions. What remains is a small cluster of rule sets that are mathematically sound, historically plausible based on the few literary clues we have, and genuinely engaging to play. The computer, in essence, hallucinates the lost rules of Rome and then applies a Turing test of fun to see which hallucinations are historically viable. Let us look at a fascinating case study, the Mercenary's Dilemma, also known as Ludus Latrunculorum. This is perhaps the most famous of all Roman board games. It was the game of deep strategy, the intellectual equivalent of the Greek game Pateia, played by emperors and frontline legionaries alike. The archaeological evidence gives us grids of varying sizes, 7x8, 8x8, 10x10, and even massive 17x18 boards found in the Roman East. We have the glass counters, usually black and white, or blue. We have Ovid's line, about custodial capture, the sandwiching mechanic. We also have a cryptic ancient poem called the Laus Pisonus, which describes a player sacrificing a piece to break an enemy blockade. The problem was, how do the pieces actually move? Do they step 1 square at a time like a king in chess? Or slide any distance like a rook? When the Digital Ludeme Project fed these variables into the AI, the system quickly identified a massive problem with the traditional rook move theory. If pieces can move unlimited distances on a small board with custodial capture, the game becomes incredibly volatile. Pieces are swept off the board far too fast. It completely lacks the tactical grind of a battlefield described in the Laus Pisonus poem. However, when the AI tested a limited movement rule, where pieces move like rooks but cannot jump, or perhaps move only a set distance, combined with a specific victory condition, the quality metrics absolutely spiked. The AI also brilliantly solved the suicide problem. In many basic human reconstructions, a player could move their piece directly between 2 enemies to attack a third. But strictly speaking, they are now sandwiched. Does this count as suicide? The AI simulations proved that allowing suicide moves creates a chaotic, illogical game flow that ruins the strategic depth. The most stable rule set, and therefore the most likely historical one, introduces a passive versus active state. You are only captured if the enemy makes the active move to sandwich you. If you walk into the sandwich yourself, you are safe. This exact rule nuance, which happens to be standard in many modern abstract board games, was independently discovered by the AI as a mathematical necessity for the game to function at a high competitive level. Furthermore, the AI shed entirely new light on the victory condition. For years, scholars argued over whether the goal was to capture all enemy pieces or merely to block them. The poem Laus Pisonus speaks of broken ranks and pieces unable to move. The AI simulations heavily favored the immobilization victory, which is essentially a blockade or stalemate over total annihilation. On the larger boards found in Roman Britain, a game of total annihilation takes hours and almost always drags into a boring draw. A game of immobilization, however, creates a tense, claustrophobic tightening of the noose. This feeling perfectly resonates with the military tactics of the Roman maniple system. The Ludus algorithm suggests that Latrunculi was not a game of mindless slaughter, but a highly sophisticated game of maneuver and encirclement. It was a simulation of the aces, the Roman battle line, teaching the Roman mind the value of the cohesive unit over the individual hero. If Latrunculorum was the AI's strategic triumph, the Coriovallum Stone was its absolute forensic masterpiece. In early 2026, the archaeological world was rocked by a study concerning a peculiar stone artifact found in Heerlen, the ancient Roman settlement of Coriovallum in the Netherlands. The stone, discovered a century prior, bore a grid of incised lines forming a rectangle with diagonals and crossing patterns. It looked vaguely like a game board, but it matched no known Roman configuration. It was not Latrunculorum. It was not duodecim scripta. For decades, it just sat in a museum storage room, a silent enigma. Was it a game? A surveyor's tool? A decorative paver? Researchers applied the Ludus methodology, but they did not just ask the AI to invent rules. They asked it to simulate the actual physical physics of play. They scanned the ancient stone with high-resolution photogrammetry, creating a microscopic topographic map of the surface. They found that the grooves were not uniform. Some lines were deeply worn, smoothed out by the friction of thousands of human fingers and sliding glass pieces over many years. Other lines were relatively pristine. This wear pattern became the physical dataset. The team then tasked the Ludus AI to play hundreds of different game types on this specific board geometry. They had the AI play race games, hunt games, blocking games, and war games. For every game type, the AI generated a digital heat map of piece movement. If the AI played a hunt game like fox and geese, the center of the board saw the most traffic. If it played a race game, the perimeter lines lit up on the heat map. The AI ran thousands of these iterations. Then, it compared its digital heat maps with the actual physical wear pattern on the 2,000-year-old stone. The match was startling, almost magical. The wear patterns on the Coriovallum Stone did not match a race game or a complex war game. They perfectly matched the traffic density of a blocking game. Specifically, a game related to modern tic-tac-toe but infinitely more complex, similar to the Three Men's Morris family or ancient desert bead games. The AI suggested that the game involved placing pieces to form lines, but with a secondary movement phase that involved sliding pieces to physically block the opponent. The deepest grooves on the actual physical stone corresponded exactly to the strategic choke points the AI agents fought over most fiercely in the digital simulation. This was a massive paradigm shift for archaeology. We were not just guessing rules anymore, we were forensically matching the ghosts of Roman gestures with digital agents. The AI had definitively proven that the Romans played a specific type of blocking game in the Low Countries, a game previously undocumented in any surviving text. It revealed a local gaming culture, perhaps a fascinating hybrid of Roman and Germanic traditions that had been completely invisible to history. So, what does the Ludus algorithm tell us about the psychology of the Roman mind? When we play these AI-reconstructed games, we are engaging in a literal form of cognitive archaeology. We are stepping directly into the neural pathways of an ancient Roman. The AI reveals that Roman games were highly deterministic. Unlike the ancient Egyptians, who loved games of pure chance like Senet, where the dice represented the unpredictable will of the gods, or the Greeks, who preferred pure mathematical calculation, the Romans occupied a middle ground, but with a very heavy lean towards strategy and control. Latrunculorum, as decoded by the AI, is a game of extreme high-risk management. The custodial capture mechanic means that every single piece is potentially vulnerable from two sides simultaneously. A formation that looks incredibly strong can be instantly shattered by a single enemy insertion. This perfectly mirrors the Roman military obsession with the integrity of the battle line. In the legions, if the line breaks, the battle is instantly lost. The game reinforces this deep cultural imperative: stay together, support your neighbor, and under no circumstances do you get isolated. The AI also highlights the Roman tolerance for intense cognitive complexity. The reconstructed rules for duodecim scripta, which is the ancient ancestor of modern backgammon, show a game that is significantly more complex than its modern counterpart. It involved 3 dice instead of 2, and arguably a movement system that allowed for far more aggressive blocking strategies. The Romans were not playing simple, mindless diversions. They were engaging in serious mental athletics. Furthermore, the DRA wishness metrics in the AI simulations offer a brilliant glimpse into Roman social dynamics. Many reconstructed variants of Latrunculorum have a surprisingly high draw rate between expert players. In a modern context, gamers might find this frustrating. But in a Roman context, perhaps gambling in a rough tavern or killing time in an armed military barrack, a game that allows for a graceful exit without a clear loser might have been incredibly socially advantageous. It prevents the dangerous loss of face and money among heavily armed soldiers. The AI literally allows us to test these sociological theories by showing us the exact mathematical frequency of such outcomes. The Digital Ludeme Project does not view these games in isolation, either. It utilizes a field called phylomimetics, which is the study of the evolution of information and memes, very similar to phylogenetics in evolutionary biology. By mathematically mapping the ludemes of Roman games against games from Egypt, Greece, Persia, and the Germanic tribes, The AI actively constructs a family tree of human play. The algorithm has shown the strong genetic link between the Greek game Pateia and the Roman Latrunculorum. But it also highlights exactly where the cultural mutation occurred. The Romans added the dux, or king piece, a mechanic confirmed by AI balance testing as absolutely necessary for breaking late-game stalemates. This addition of a hero piece shifts the game from a democratic phalanx battle to a more imperial, centered command structure. Is this a direct tabletop reflection of Rome's political shift from a republic to an empire? It is highly probable. Even more fascinating is the mathematical link forward in time. The AI analysis shows striking similarities between the blocking logic of the Coriovallum Stone and the much later Viking game Hnefatafl, the King's Table. Did Roman mercenaries serving on the freezing Rhine frontier teach these mechanics to Germanic tribes, who then carried them north to Scandinavia centuries later? The Ludus algorithm provides the hard data to back up this cultural diffusion theory, tracing the migration of rule sets across the map of Europe exactly like a virus. The success of the Ludus algorithm in decoding Roman games is honestly just the beginning. The exact same methodology is now being applied to the absolute holy grails of lost ancient games. Take the royal game of Ur. While we have a physical cuneiform tablet describing the rules for this ancient Babylonian game, the translation is heavily debated among scholars. AI is currently testing the different translations by playing them to see which linguistic interpretation actually produces a playable, balanced game. Then there is Senet, the legendary game of the Egyptian pharaohs. Was it purely a spiritual race to the afterlife, or did it contain hidden layers of strategy? The AI is currently simulating the movement of pieces on the 3x10 grid to mathematically determine the probability of different rule sets. And perhaps most exciting is the Knossos game, the magnificent, completely baffling inlaid board found in the Minoan palace of Knossos on Crete. No one has any idea how it was played. It is the Mount Everest of ancient board games. The Ludus algorithm is currently mapping the complex geometry of the board to find mathematical symmetries that might finally hint at its lost mechanics. The implications of this AI extend far beyond ancient history. This exact technology is now being used to design entirely new games. By reversing the process, a game designer can tell the AI they want a game that has high drama, a low draw rate, and uses a hexagonal board, and the system can organically generate rule sets that have never existed before in human history. We are literally using the ghosts of the past to design the play of the future. To fully grasp this, we must briefly look under the hood of the generation phase, which deals with combinatorial explosion. A game board of 8x8 squares with 16 pieces per side offers a staggering number of starting positions. Add in variables for movement, capture, and turn order, and the search space becomes larger than the number of atoms in the observable universe. The AI manages this by using constraint satisfaction. It locks in the hard archaeological facts, like board size or the existence of custodial capture, and then explores the soft variables. One major discovery was the setup phase. Many modern abstract games start with fixed positions, like chess, but the AI found that for Roman games, a placement phase, where players take turns putting pieces on an empty board, creates a vastly more balanced and strategic experience. A fixed start often leads to a massive first-player advantage of over 60%, whereas a placement phase drops this to a perfectly fair 51-49 split. This perfectly aligns with ancient texts describing the gathering of forces before the battle. While the Ludus algorithm is a monumental triumph of logic, it is important to remember what the AI misses, primarily the human element. Romans were notoriously degenerate gamblers. They bet on everything. It is incredibly likely that these games, though skill-based, involved heavy betting. Did the rules change when silver denarii were on the table? Did they play faster? The AI assumes perfect play, assuming players always want to win efficiently. But in a real Roman tavern, a player might make a suboptimal move to deliberately prolong the game, or to humiliate an arrogant opponent. We also have to consider house rules. Just as modern Monopoly is played slightly differently in every single household today, Roman games likely had infinite regional variations. The AI is searching for the mathematically perfect Platonic ideal of the game, but the historical reality was likely a very messy, localized spectrum of variance. And of course, there is the cheating. Roman dice found in excavations are frequently shaved or secretly weighted to cheat. The AI currently simulates fair play and cannot yet model the metagame of spotting a cheater, which was surely a thrilling part of the ancient gaming experience. Despite these human variables, the lasting legacy of the Ludus algorithm is that it completely democratizes history. In the past, only a scholar with a PhD in classics could access the obscure Latin texts describing these games. Today, the code is open source. Anyone can interact with it. We are entering an incredible new age of participatory archaeology. We are no longer just looking at the past, behind dusty museum glass cases. We are directly interacting with it. We are running the exact same strategic algorithms in our modern brains that the Roman legionaries ran in theirs 2 millennia ago. When you corner an opponent's piece in the digital recreation of Ludus Latrunculorum, and you feel that sudden spark of intellectual satisfaction, you are feeling an emotion that is 2,000 years old. You are sharing a precise cognitive moment with a ghost, and in that exact moment, the distance between the modern silicon chip and the ancient marble stone vanishes completely. The AI has not just reconstructed rules, it has resurrected an experience. It has proven that while stones erode and papyrus rots away, the pure logic of a good game is truly immortal. It waits in the mathematical ether, patient and eternal, ready for a mind, whether biological or artificial, to discover it all over again. The Romans often spoke of the man, the spirits of the dead who required constant remembrance by the living. In a strange, beautiful, and highly digital way, the Ludus algorithm has performed the ultimate rite of remembrance. It has invited the ancient Romans back to the table, handed them the dice, and asked them, finally, to show us their moves.